what a manager is looking for, right, in IT and everything, and I don't see this talked about, is that you are fix their problems and don't cause any new ones. That's going to vary based on the manager. The manager may want somebody who is just an absolute master at Python. Manager A wants that. Well, manager B just wants somebody who can do the grunt work coding that doesn't require a lot. The candidates that would be best for each are going to be different.
So I'm here with Lee, Headhunter. Yeah, could you introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know who you are or what you're doing? Yeah.
Absolutely not. No. Yeah, I'm the headless headhunter, and I am a corporate recruiter. I've done both internal and external recruitment, which probably doesn't mean a lot to people, which is partly why I started doing this, is to actually explain the nuts and bolts of how recruitment works, because nobody really knows how the sausage is made, and there's a lot of scam artists trying to prey on people. So I hope that I can give some insight and help fix up people's resumes, tell them how to wordsmith stuff, what they should do in a corporate setting, that kind of thing, all for free as I do it during my off time. So that is me.
Okay, and how long have you been a recruiter?
I have about 5 years experience, 5+. It was sporadic at first until I really figured out I really did want to do this. So technically, yeah, 5-6 years experience, I think it is. So and I've worked for a couple of Fortune 500 companies. I've placed in a variety of industries. I'm kind of industry agnostic. So with the exception of law, I have not done law yet.
With law? Wait, what?
Law recruitment. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And so are you and your YouTube channel, I think, is primarily focused on tech stuff, right?
It's not, but 70% of the people that give me resumes are in tech, and I have found out that if I put a tech thing in the actual title, I get 3,000 more views. But I review all resumes regardless of industry. It's just most of it right now is tech. So that's really interesting. One, that's really cool that you're doing the YouTube stuff too. And then also for anyone, I guess I've got 7 people watching now, but if you guys want your resumes reviewed for free, that's what he's doing. You just he just does it on YouTube. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Do you think that does that matter? I don't know. Can recruiters do just just kind of anything? They're just oh, I'm going to recruit for this thing and also this thing. And also I'm going to recruit for software engineers and also data scientists. Is there a skill cap there? There is. Okay, so here this is argued back and forth in recruitment, and I don't want people to think there is one right answer to this. This is my opinion on it, because this is a giant argument in recruitment. Is I think knowledge of the industry is extra credit, in that it can help. It's obvious that it helps, but it will not let you pass alone without good recruitment. So if you have a good, solid basis on recruitment, you can be industry agnostic. That is my view. But other recruiters may disagree. So I don't want to be that's the only rule. That's hotly debated within the recruitment industry.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, and I guess we'll just get into tech help stuff. What do you see in tech? I've heard you say on your stream that the tech industry is going really, really poorly right now. And is that, what's your thoughts on that? Or how can people get out of that if they're in tech and they're trying to get a job? What mistakes do you see they're making? Yeah.
Right. So that's a lot. But I do think tech is in a downturn, but here's kind of why it's in a downturn, and I can explain sort of the industry cycle. This happens in a lot of industries. It's not just tech. So what will happen is everybody wants to be in it, right? Right now, it was 3, 4, or 5 years ago, whatever, it was tech. So everybody signs in, they get their CS, they really want to be in tech, and there is a flood of applicants for tech. Then when that happens, there's going to be a downturn. And downturns always happen in any industry. So the downturn happens, and then all of a sudden they're no. And even people that are senior devs are having trouble. So everybody moves out of tech. And then what happens is when they start stabilizing, is they're oh crap, we don't have anybody, because all the people that were senior are now super senior and cost more than they want to pay, or alternatively, all the new people that joined left. There's no mid-level developers anymore.
And then it's like, oh, it's hot again. So the mid-level developers that stuck with it, they had a little bit of opportunity, get to fight for higher pay, they get better jobs, it's easier. And then everybody says, oh, wow, tech, let's join that. And then it happens again. And it even happened with accounting too, which is like 7 years ago or something. Accounting, nobody, like whatever, you had trouble getting a job. And then now, if you're an accountant with 2 to 3 years of experience, you're golden. You got the golden ticket.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. I guess we should all be. Yeah, I guess all these unemployed computer science students should just jump into being accountants then.
But then when they do that, it may go in a downturn. So you can't. Yeah, I don't want to say like, oh, you need to jump into this, because like they all go through cycles. Eventually they'll go back. And if you're able to stick with it, that is when you can actually make money. Unless your industry is completely like wiped out by innovation. But I don't imagine that's going to happen to tech. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I agree completely. Like, one thing I've noticed, I think, is that like, because I've been in the space, as a software engineer, and like I've also talked to software engineers and like give my advice for them. And the one thing I noticed is that like they just have their expectations. Like in 2020, it used to be the case that you could just graduate and then like you have the projects that are whatever that you did in school, and then you can interview for jobs, you can get the job, like literally no extra work on your part. And now, now it's not. Well, and now it's not like that. Now, you actually have to build your own projects. You have to like do the Leetcode stuff that's outside so you can pass the coding interviews. And, but like, anyways, all that to say is that like, I think there's just a lot of people who joined because they were like, this is like free money basically. And they're finding that out. And I think like those people are going to be leaving or just like not having experience basically. Until like, and then that's going to fuel that cycle that you're talking about where, okay, now we don't have anybody, now we need people. And it goes like that. Yeah.
So in regards to that, there is and I want to be very clear here, is in most industries, even if they're in an upturn, unless they're in a super, super upturn, fresh grads is still a nightmare to get a job with. And I try to tell that to a lot of people, is that your hardest job search, almost regardless of the market, is getting your first year or two of experience in almost any industry. That's going to be the thing that's going to make or break, because even when the market was good, it's still tough to hire fresh devs. It was easier. They got more opportunities, but if they can stick with it and they can actually get like a job, and I mean, seriously, like anything, even if you work at like Bob's Diner down the street and you're fixing up their broken web page, it'll help that if you can get those first 2 years in. No, I agree. Like one of the advice things that I would say is like, if you could just code, like if you just put stuff on your resume and say like, hey, I did this for a business, like it's going to look way better than the personal project. Always. Business, always. There's,
and it could be like you said, like Bob or whatever, Joe's like, I don't know, washing machines or whatever. I mean, if you make their website, like it still counts. So, and the thing is, a lot of software engineers, again, like I've talked to them face to face, and like they're just like, no, I wouldn't do that, or like I'm not going to do that for free, or like whatever. Like, I don't know, it's stupid. Anyways, I do want to talk about other stuff like that's actually going to help people.
Yeah. No worries.
And okay, cool. So like, what do you look for in a software engineering candidate? Somebody in chat actually asked, like, what do you look for? What's like the skill set that you would use for like machine learning? But I guess like we could talk about both those. So like, what's the skill set for machine learning? What's the skill set for software engineer? Like, what's your thought when you're like scanning through all those resumes? Yeah.
So here's my thing about resumes is everybody across, again, that's why I say industry agnostic. It's just mostly now related to IT, is the resume is not what you think it is. I have seen a lot of career coaches, a lot of other people say you need to use it as a marketing document. You need to use it as a showcase of your excellence. And that is not what a resume is. A resume is, at its basic form, showing that you have the minimum qualifications for an interview. That's it. And what we'd be looking for, and this was a search I did a little bit ago for somebody else. I don't know if this is as relevant because I don't have an ML person like right off the top. I'm trying to start like doing this because I know how to find these things. So these are what I would be looking for, I guess, AI adjacent jobs, at least for coding, which would be anything with AI, ML, LLM, NLP, Python, R, MATLAB, LangChain, Learn. I hate IT names. Cloud, TensorFlow, PyTorch, SDLC, CI/CD, DevOps, Hadoop, Spark, and Kafka. And if you try to showcase that, oh, I'm a great engineer, I did all this stuff, the person's not going to understand. Look, we're not coders, and you have to think of the target for your resume as two people, the recruiter and the hiring manager. And you need to write it, because I know every single one of the people that is watching, they have a relative, they have a family member, an uncle, an aunt, a parent who's like, oh, wow, you got a degree in computer science. Can you help me with my computer? It's not turning on. And then you're like, no. And they're like, please, you're the only computer person I know. And you're like, okay. So you go over there and it's not plugged in. That's who you have to write your audience for. And that is why they look for the keywords, is to show that as the minimum qualifications to meet for an interview. The interview is where you show why you're a badass, essentially.
But okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then, so that's what you say for coders: AI, ML, LangChain. Okay.
Specifically, again, this may not be 100% accurate because I did this a little bit ago. I'd have to redo it. But for an AI software engineer, this is what I'd be looking for. And here, as a more accurate one, this is what I'd be looking for front end, right? This. And everybody, if this is not on your resume, you at least the first and second line, you probably won't get an interview. And this is where a lot of the people have problems with this, is they're like, well, why would I put HTML and CSS? Of course I know that. It's obvious. And if it's obvious, put it twice on your resume. But I've seen phenomenal people get rejected because they don't put HTML and CSS for a front end position.
Interesting. What do you think about for like machine learning?
I mean, I'd have to do the actual search myself through LinkedIn. I don't have all of the things immediately on, unfortunately.
What do you think is like, or do you think recruiter, or one, do you care at all about someone's like Leetcode profile or like DSA stuff?
I wouldn't know the difference. The manager might, but like the recruiter won't. Like I don't, and that's what I want to impart is if you put a code line of JavaScript in front of me, of Java in front of me, and C in front of me, I would not be able to tell the difference between them.
Yeah.
Like even just hello world and how it's written. And that's what I really want to impart, is because that's why your resume is a government form. It is something you turn in at the DMV. It is not a marketing tool, because there is, okay, so you know what some of the worst resumes I've ever seen in my life are, besides nurses? That's a separate issue. Besides nurses, the worst resumes I've seen ever are from phenomenal people in marketing and design, is because they try to make their resume a marketing tool or a fancy design to stand out. And your objective is not to stand out during the interview, during the resume process. The interview, you do stand out, but not the resume process. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So really big on the keywords. Okay. And you said you don't know anything about Leetcode profiles. I guess for the interviews that you're seeing, like the technical, are you just concerned with getting people through like to the interview when you're choosing them, or because if they're giving coding interviews, for example, like if somebody, like you could have candidates who actually have done a ton of like prep or whatever for coding interviews, like basically you could ask questions around that. But I noticed most recruiters don't ask any questions around that, but
because we wouldn't understand it. That's what I want to impart, is we would not know.
Okay. Basically, like the thing I'm thinking is that like you could have a candidate who is very, very confident that they will pass like their technical interviews. There's two questions on here, I guess. Is that one, like, do you think that like, should those candidates be like doing something? Like, do you think that like, and maybe in terms of negotiations, maybe in terms of like maybe getting some like bonus notes that are taken about them, but like for the candidates who are like really confident they can just crush any technical interview, they also have like the background experience. Like, is there any like, should they say anything to the recruiter on that initial phone call? Explain anything?
So like, I was recruiting for a company, and I was recruiting for 3 separate software engineer positions, right? Different managers for each of them, basically same tech stack. It was Python/C, I think, off the top of my head. And each one of those managers had a different tech interview process. One of them hated Leetcode, said it was worthless. Others said it was super what they're going to go for.
Yep.
And my concern as a recruiter, and this is what recruiters are concerned of, because remember, there are two parts. There's the recruiter and the hiring manager. And the hiring manager is where most of the, well, all of the decisions happen, is I'm not going to know how good you are through tech regardless. All I'm looking for is that you meet the minimum qualifications so that the manager won't yell at me and say, Lee, you set this person in, they didn't have HTML. And I said, well, it was obvious on the it was obvious because everybody has. I said, it's not on the resume. Don't throw it to me. That's all I'm looking for. And that's what I want to break people's conception of like the difference between the recruiter and the manager and how they need to structure it. I cannot help, and I want to be clear, I cannot tell you how to get an edge up in the Leetcode interview because that's going to be a manager by manager basis. And I wish I could, but I wouldn't know the difference between the two. And I've asked them, I'm like, so how do you tell how a coder is good? And they all give me different answers. So what I try to do is get people to the volume of high interviews so that they can get past that, because the recruiter is looking for the fact that the bare minimum, like I said, and that you're not a jerk. If you are a jerk to the person taking your phone screen, they will tell that to the manager. And that's usually an instant disqualification. You can be nervous, that's okay. But if you're like yelling at the person, which has happened quite a bit, or you sound very, very upset with the person, that's probably a disqualification, and we'll bring it to the managers like, hey, they made my sourcer cry, and they'll be like, well, we don't want him on our team. So
and who's like one of like the best candidates? Like, what's like the ideal candidate for you to work with and place? Like, what kind of characteristics do they have? So like, I guess just imagine like the best candidate who you ever worked with. Like, what was that person like?
I know this could sound weird. When my job is done right, when recruiting is done right, we barely interact. That doesn't mean they're bad candidates if they ask questions, far from it. Managers are always going to look for different stuff, both in soft skills, both in hard skills. And there is never going to be, like, the number one rule of recruitment is there's never a singular rule for everything. And as long as from a soft skills perspective, so let me back up. What a manager is looking for, right? In IT and everything, and I don't see this talked about, is that you are fixing that you fix their problems and don't cause any new ones. And that's going to vary based on the manager. The manager may want somebody who is just an absolute master at Python. Manager A wants that. Well, manager B just wants somebody who can do the grunt work coding that doesn't require a lot. And the candidates that would be best for each are going to be different. So there is no best, which is because, like, there's no coding review where all the coders get together once a year and be like, I am now ranked number 32 coder in the world. So as far as I'm aware, maybe there is, but
okay. Well, and I guess when I mentioned like who's like the best one you've worked with, I'm thinking of like, what can someone do to come across as like, you know, nice, friendly, to a recruiter, or like, essentially what I'm thinking is that like, if you have like being nice and like having like a relationship, like, you know, with the candidate or with the recruiter is like really, really cool, because you can message that candidate maybe possibly a couple of years in the future if they're looking for a job, or you can, you know, for the candidate, they can get like offers like negotiated on their behalf. What I'd imagine just better from that. Is that I don't know, I guess, do you agree with that? Or
I kind of, but not really. I mean, so you're also sort of conflating internal recruitment with external recruitment, which is the difference between internal and agency, which have, despite both being recruiters, it's kind of the difference between, I'm going to say front end and back end, right? Like they're very different jobs, even though they're both software engineers. And recruiters have about a 3-week memory, I would say, is if after 3 weeks, if you don't contact them, you're gone. But like, if I called somebody about another role, I would want to do that regardless of your relationship with me. What you want to do to, like, in the interview at least, is just be somebody that they want to work with 40 hours a week, right? Like, if you are going to be stuck with somebody 40 hours a week, and I bet you can think of a lot of people in your life that you would not want to be stuck with for 2 hours, let alone 40 hours a week. So, but you probably have another person who's like, you know what? Even if they're not my best friend ever, I could deal with working with them for 40 hours a week. And that's the kind of personality that will get you jobs. I know that's not like, because like there's so much misunderstanding about like you need to be the best. Like, no, you just, if you're not a jerk and they want to work with you 40 hours a week, that's how networking is. That is the secret to networking, is they are fine working with you for 40 hours a week. And then they're like, you know what? I remember I hired a person 3 years ago. I hired Raymond, and Raymond was great to work with. They didn't cause any real problems. They were always on time. I'm going to give them a call to see if they want this position. And that's the secret to networking, is just getting interviews, is to be somebody that they want to work with 40 hours a week.
Okay. So then it sounds like you're saying that for you, like the relationship doesn't really matter. Like after 3 weeks, for most recruiters, they would just like forget, basically. So there's no actual like long-term type of thing, specifically for external recruiters, hiring agencies.
And like I remember the people I placed, but it's the volume issue, because most recruiters who are internal are working with between 35 and 70 open positions at once. And if you tell me, oh, Lee, I worked with you 3 years ago, you placed me at X, I'd be like, oh, of course, I know you. But there's the horde of people that come through your desk, even as a agency recruiter, means you can't really do that. And agency recruiters are less usually as concerned with candidates as much they are with hiring managers. Because again, recruiters, even agency, work for the company. They do not work for the candidate. So not that we can't have it. Like someone reached out to me that I did place, and I'm going to help them out, and that's fine because they told me where. But like the volume of people that come by is part of that, and that is the thing that not a lot of people get, is the pure volume of people. That you can't. Otherwise, you would not be able to do your job well.
Yeah. And okay. So then, what do you think is like holding a lot of software engineers back when it comes to?
Sorry.
Yeah. When it comes to getting interviews, and getting noticed, things like that. Yeah.
It's the resume almost always, and it's because you try to convince me that you're the coolest software engineer ever, and I wouldn't know that, because that's not how recruitment works. And if a recruiter tells you that, they're either lying or better than me. So, and I wouldn't be able to tell you which unless I saw their process.
Yeah.
So,
do you think cover letters matter, or do cover letters matter?
Most recruiters, again, there is no monolith, but one size fits most is no. And the only time I've ever had to create a job opening with cover letters is when I could not convince the manager that cover letters are not necessary. And that is most of the other recruiters I've talked to are sort of the same deal, as if we don't really care for cover letters. Some managers do, but it's sometimes they can't even be sent the same way. So have one on file that if they require it, send it in, but don't spend hours on a cover letter. You shouldn't need to. So, because most don't need it, and most recruiters are not going to look at it.
Okay. Okay. So the resume is the biggest thing that you've noticed is like holding them back.
Always.
Okay.
Pretty much from interviews, because that's its only goal, is to get an interview.
And yeah, I guess what are those things? Like you mentioned it. You mentioned a little bit of it before.
Yeah. So essentially, but which is why I try to impart this, because it's a reoccurring theme, is your resume needs to be written like a government form. It needs to be basic, it needs to be simple, and it needs to be written for the lowest common denominator. You need to write it for the person that asked you to plug in and plug out your computer. And what we're going to be looking for is specifically keywords from an IT perspective. There is a bit of a difference between keywords and qualifications, but from a non-internship, because in internships, qualifications are a little bit more important than keywords. We are going to be looking for keywords, and the structure of how you write that, I have my guide up a little bit, is essentially going to be this right here that I'm going to link in the chat real quick.
Yeah.
So Bullet points need to be what plus how plus why. The what is your keyword or qualification, the how is the how you used it, and the why is why you used it. The only exception is under each job or project, the very first bullet point needs to be a summary sentence of that job, because it's very important. That's the only there are only two types of bullet points. There are what plus how plus why, and there are summary sentence under each job position. And those are the only real two types of bullet points for non-managers. Once you get to the manager level, things get a little different.
Yeah. In terms of like page length, for someone who has like 2 years of experience, should they be going multi-page? I've heard that a couple times, basically, where like it used to be the standard rule was 1 page for tech interviews, like software engineers and all that. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it is missing the point of it. And I know that's going to explain it, is essentially, it doesn't matter if your resume is 1 page or 3 pages. What matters is that they can see that you're qualified within the first half of your resume. So if it's, if you just started 1 page, probably, but I've seen resume length is irrelevant compared to finding it in the first half. Because some managers do like longer resumes. Like I've submitted a candidate that had the qualifications in the first half, and they had like a 5-page resume, and the manager loved it. Some candidates have like 1 page, and they didn't have it in the first half, and the manager didn't like it. So it's the length of the resume is irrelevant. What matters is we can find it in the first half of that. Because some managers do like longer resumes, some hate them, and you're not going to be able to figure out which is which. So,
Okay, interesting. Okay, and how often do you see like AI? Like, how is AI being used right now in recruiting? Or have you seen those changes with that or whatever?
Not as much. It's people have been complaining about the recruitment process, rightfully so. I'm not going to argue with those. There's a lot broken, and AI is the new boogeyman. How recruiters search is largely the same. It'd be foolish to say there is no AI. Of course there's AI, but it's not as well adapted as people think. I would say unless you're specifically applying to an AI-based company, you're probably not going to deal with it. And writing your resume the same way is going to be fine. So AI is not what's rejecting you. It is a human. It is a human that cannot tell the difference between JavaScript and Java, or between RESTful APIs and SQL. Hopefully they do know a little bit of the difference between those. But
oh yeah, okay. I remember what I was going to ask. Was that like at the start you said that like there's a lot of scammers out there in the recruiting, like I guess space, like or the career information, career advice.
Oh yeah,
space. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
You post open for work, and there'll be 30 people messaging you, which I want to be clear. You should post the open to work banner. It is beneficial, but you're going to see like 30 people immediately say, hey, I think your experience is great, but your resume is not ATS compliant, or your resume needs to be tweaked with a resume score, or your resume needs to do this. And then they're going to charge you like $200 to slap it into Chat GPT, and your resume is going to be garbage. There's so many people trying to do that. So what I'd like to tell everyone is ATS scores don't really exist. While there are some ATSs that rank people, it is in the vast majority, and you really don't need to worry about it unless you are applying to their company directly. In addition, there is no ATS compliant. That's not how ATSs work. All you need is if it's in a PDF or doc format, so Word doc, you're fine. Google Words works too. But yeah, as long as it's PDF or Word doc, you're fine. Each ATS will garble your resume differently, but we can ignore all that and just check your actual resume that you sent it, as long as it is in that format, because Workday at company A is customized differently than Workday in company B. So a resume that would work on Workday company A's system is not going to work on Workday company B. But again, it doesn't matter if it's going to format it right, because as long as it's in a PDF or Word doc, we can just click that instead. And it's usually easier to just click that instead. So
yeah. Okay. Wait, hold on. I don't understand. Right. So you said that there is ATS, but it doesn't matter that much.
ATSs
because
are not
because
what
the human is because
Yeah.
the human is going to be looking at it.
Yeah, it's an ATS, right, which stands for Applicant Tracking System or Systems. It's like Moose. The plural is the same for both,
Yeah.
which bugs me. All they do, so like I had between 35 and 50 positions at one of my jobs. One other, I had 75 open positions.
A lot.
And what?
That's a lot.
It's average.
Okay.
That is the average is between 35 and 75 for internal. It is 70 is on the high end, but it's still it's high, but it's in the average. So what an ATS actually does is, by the way, when I was doing the 35 to 50 positions, some were data scientists, some were software engineers, some were oligonucleotide scientists, some were other types of scientists, some were project managers, some were managers, some were IT managers, and some were sales, and a bunch of others that I can't remember. And what an ATS does is it just sorts those all. So if you apply to the sales position, I click that and I see how many people apply to that, and I could go through the resume. That's largely all it really does. It does send, like, it does make, the only automation is really just like you have a template of a rejection letter, and then you can click a button and it will send that, but the decision is still made by a human. And people are gonna ask, well, how do they sort people? And it's first come, first serve. That's how the majority of them are set up, is you are actually sorted on a first come, first serve basis. So the faster you apply to a job, the fresher it is, the better your chances.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I've noticed. Okay, I guess this is like my general thoughts on okay. So basically, one thing I kind of realized when I was like doing interviews is that if when I would do like hiring, or like I call them like recruiter screen calls. It's like the first initial call that you have with the recruiter, and then like they're just asking you, they ask you the same questions. What are your salary expectations? Where do you live? Why'd you leave your last job? And what's your experience with this? But I noticed one thing was that, like, if I gave answers that were just like, oh yeah, I have experience with this technology. Like, so they ask you, do you have experience with like Java? Like, say, oh, if I say like I have experience with this technology versus like, I think I would get rejected. But if I would change it and I said, I worked using Java. Yeah, I have experience with Java. I used it at my company for 2 years. I built things using Spring Boot, and like basically, if I just like said all that stuff, then they would pass me. I don't know. I guess, what do you think about that? Is that like, do you think that was just coincidence, or do you think there's like a strategy to talking about your experience or on those calls or whatever?
First off, you got the name right. Most people get the name wrong. It is a recruiter screen. So I give you props for that. It's a pre-screen or recruiter screen, same name, different, and I want to add a corollary is not all companies' pre-screen processes are good. I've actually had to fix some pre-screen processes to make them better at previous companies. And what's happening on the back end is the pre-screen to recruiters is not a real interview. We don't consider that an interview. We consider that a basically double check to make sure you have the right stuff, that your salary is in range, that you have the ability to work in the state or the company, that you have whatever. It's basically an extra little check. And personally, I found, and I think you were sort of right, is like, not just I have experience, but I have experience with X and Y. Most of the recruiters are going to just write in their little box is they have corporate experience with Java. So what you can say is, to easy it is basically, I have 3+ years of corporate experience with Java, and they would love to write that down, because that is then usually sent to the manager, and the manager will move you forward. So if the recruiter can actually get all of that information down, which most can't, which was the main thing I changed internally, is candidates were monologuing because we asked bad questions, is I got them to stop monologuing by asking the right questions, and the manager with that. So that's just the recruiter double checking. That's essentially still like the interview. They're just double checking to make everything is in. And by saying I worked at X, they can at least put they worked at Google for 3 years. So so I think you had the right idea. Just try not to monologue too much, but make it sure they could write it down easy, because not a lot of those are well crafted on the company side. I'll be honest.
Okay, cool. All right, let's talk too about like salary stuff. So one of those questions that they'll ask is like, what's your expected range? I've heard that you're supposed to give one. I like I don't know, yeah, I don't know, like what's the general approach that the candidate should have for their best interests. Like obviously, candidates are going to want the most money as possible. And when they're given like, okay, can you give a range? Like, should you try to defer it? And then if the deferment fails, like then you give the range, like basically like, delay it as much as possible. I know obviously that makes your job way more annoying because you want the range, right? At least that would my guess, but yeah.
I mean, I think the range should be in the salary. I think it saves time on the company part, but so I personally believe that the salary for every job description should be in the job description. I am pro salary on job description. That makes everybody's lives easier in my mind. But it's tricky because you don't want to, you don't want to hurt your chances because you want to be within it. So what I would say personally is find out where your bare minimum is, right? And this is partly how to negotiate. So like, let's say you want what you need, the bare minimum you need to move is 60K, right? So what you could put is you could put 60K to 95K depending on factors, right? So then they know, okay, at least they're within range. Salary negotiations for IT right now are going to be tough. They're a dime a dozen, and you're not going to have as much negotiating power. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but you still have some. And this is honestly, again, this is a problem with the company, not the candidate. Should be on the salary, I personally believe, so that it saves the company time at least. But yeah, so give a range. So that way, at least you know that even if they try to lowball you, the lowball is still within what you're able to live on.
Yeah.
And some managers negotiate, some candidates negotiate, some don't, but that at least gives you within the range. And you really don't want to knock out a job if it's in the minimum until you know everything, because some benefits packages are worth it. I actually, here's a screw up that I did. There was a recruitment job and it did not pay much comparatively to my current job. I think it was like a lateral move at best, potentially like 2K less. And I did not take the interview seriously. I was dumb. And during the interview, I was like, yeah, let me see the benefits. And then after the interview, I looked at the benefits and I would be saving like 10K in benefits alone. And it would have been a huge step up. But because I was a fool, I didn't take the interview seriously. So you never know how the benefits will change. And worst comes to worst, you at least get practice in the interview for the company that is willing to pay you what you want.
Yeah.
You should always go to the interview. Never necessarily take the offer, but you should always go to the interview because you just don't know, and it gives you practice. That is my personal goal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Definitely. I mean, interviewing practice is really good. You get less nervous, right? You get more experience. You get the practice and make less mistakes. Yeah. Okay. Talk about like LinkedIn stuff. So I know recruiters use LinkedIn a lot. What are things to look for LinkedIn? Also, I have what I could do is I could just share mine. Honestly, like it probably would be better, but I'll like my general. I think it'd be better if I share my screen and just tell you my thoughts on LinkedIn. So I had another recruiter, but he was from London. I think lives in London. So I don't know if that strategy applies, but I'm gonna share my screen and
I don't know the recruitment meta outside of the US. I will be full. Yeah. I've gotten people jobs outside of the US based on my strategies, but that's So while you're doing this, I can talk a little bit. Is essentially there's a lot of people say you need to jazz up, optimize your LinkedIn, and it can help, but largely it's only going to help if your market is hot based on how external recruiters find you. And this is the difference between internal and external. And I know I have a cutoff in like 12 minutes, so I can't go into the full thing, but essentially you want a good profile when your market is solid to better, like average or above, because if it's average to above and companies are having trouble finding candidates, they will then use sourcing as a method to find candidates. And when they source, then you want your LinkedIn to be solid, which essentially is just have the keywords in your LinkedIn. That's kind of it. Is you do this with what I've been saying is you have that, and then based on how we search, this is a truncated version of it, we will find you if you have those. So, but that's also what career coaches say. Your LinkedIn needs to be optimized. It's like if the market's bad, they're not going to search for people. Which means they don't. There, as long as your LinkedIn doesn't have anything that like would scare somebody off, like don't get crazy political. Don't insult people. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Don't post crazy stuff. But there's nothing that would super help you unless it's that. But it is beneficial when your market is hot. Like right now, it can get you an increase in pay if you're like an accountant, because you can then get external recruiters or the few internal recruiters that are allowed to source to get to you for higher pay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Pat's Hello World. He's another streamer actually. He gets significantly more views than me. He's in chat, but he asked the question. At least in streaming, he doesn't make YouTube videos, but he just asked a question like, I guess it's his questions like, what's the best place to like apply to jobs? But like he's asking like, where jobs generally posted? Are they posted on LinkedIn or are they posted on Indeed? Yeah.
So, Hello World. I want to add them because I like that. I want to add their Twitch. I'm trying to find more people on Twitch. There is the way most jobs work is they are posted internally from the ATS to those job boards. So Indeed, LinkedIn, and is the most common ones. That is where you will find the bulk of the jobs. And it's the same job on LinkedIn and Indeed. It's just it all feeds back into the ATS, which is something it does do. And again, in the order they came in. But there is I will tell you a secret strategy that is very risky, but can pay off if you don't have a lot of experience. So if it's Indeed or LinkedIn, most jobs, then there's ZipRecruiter, all those things. Some of them go ZipRecruiter, Monster, but most of them are going to be on Indeed and LinkedIn. They are the biggest. Okay. There is a place. I'm being serious with this, is if you are a fresher, so fresh graduate, you do not have a lot of experience or you're trying to break into a field, Craigslist. I'm serious. Craigslist is 95% scams. I'm not joking. 95% of them are scams. They're trying to take your money. But the 5% of jobs that are legit are not going to be posted anywhere. And those are going to be posted by companies that would hire more entry-level people because they don't have a recruiter. They don't know enough about the process to not use Craigslist. Yeah. And it's cheap. It's like $25 while the others are 100 and 200. So yes, Pat's Hello World. I'm serious. Again, I want to be clear. Most of them are scams, but the few like 2% of jobs that are not scams, you can get it. I've known a couple of people that have gotten their starts in various industries specifically because of Craigslist. So it works. But again, be very, very careful because most of them are scams. That's it does work. I've known people that got their foot in the door and they were able to command higher salaries because of that. Because when you interview for your next job, they're not going to ask, oh, did you find it on Craigslist? They're just going to assume it's normal. And I will say those jobs typically can vary between the best boss you ever have and the worst person ever. But if you need a start, be very careful, but they exist.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, I think the general idea is that like, where are the jobs that not that many people are applying to, and nobody's probably going on Craigslist, and like those companies they probably barely know about the internet. But yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let me share my screen too for this LinkedIn stuff. Although Craigslist, very weird. Never would have expected that. I did not think that was going to come out of your mouth, but
I didn't either.
But it did. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's controversial.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So like basically I've got like my LinkedIn profile here. So again, I talked to a recruiter, at least that recruiter I told you, and he was like, actually I've talked to a couple maybe, but like tagline, like you want to just put your technologies that you've used, because I guess a lot of recruiters don't know certain technologies or stuff, or they predominantly look for technologies.
It's how we search is based on keywords, specifically from a Boolean search, which I don't have time to explain all of it, but essentially we use Boolean searches to find candidates like this. And if those don't exist, you won't be seen. So ideally, it's also better in your job description, like in your below too, but it will help you when the market is better. So Python, perfect. That's what we'd be looking for. Exactly that. Maybe let's see. Do I see SQL? Yes, I do. Maybe React APIs and stuff would be good too. But Basically,
Yeah,
it's the same keywords. Yeah, no, that's fine. And
Yeah.
it's how we search is we just type in a keywords in a Boolean search string, which is Java. It would be like Java. I don't want to use Java because that's actually kind of hard to search for because it hits JavaScript. And Docker, and let's do AWS or GCP or Azure. I keep forgetting that one. And API, let's just say. So I would type this in Python and Docker and AWS GCP and API. And I would then every resume, every LinkedIn profile that has those on there, one of each would show up. I probably wouldn't use that exact search string because that's both too broad and not broad enough. But in general, that is how that works. So.
Yeah. In terms of shoot, what's my train of
Also,
thought?
I think I added Pat's Hello World, so I think I just followed you.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. He's he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. His streams are funny too. It's I would recommend you check it out. Because like half of the stream is him like playing games, and the other half is like him like studying like the Leetcode stuff. But okay. One question I have too is like, do recruiters care about like having like an active LinkedIn profile? So like for example, right, I've got 159 likes here, 100 here, but basically like I talk about obviously Leetcode and stuff like that. I placed literally like 1.6 in the world. Do recruiters care about having a social media profile? Like one thing I don't actually advise people, I don't advise any programmers to start streaming or making YouTube videos, although I like doing it. But I'm curious, does this matter?
Largely, no.
That's what I figured. I don't think anybody ever asks me, actually.
Yeah, so in my opinion, is while it can matter, the amount of time it takes could be better used elsewhere. Because, I think that's kind of the big thing is based on how we search. Now, there is a benefit that it can do is on LinkedIn in particular, when you search for candidates for external, which is again passive candidate sourcing, which is really only there in an average to good market, which IT is not yet, is it lets you see if they just posted on that, which does mean you would be more likely to be connected to by a recruiter because they know that you are not going to ignore the message. And if you only get a number of those a month. So, but again, overall, it's not huge, but like, don't waste a ton of time, but like, every other month or so, if you just want to post something nice, it shows that you did something, but don't waste a lot of time on it. You're like, I've seen a lot of people try to connect with everybody, and it's like, that's beneficial for me and you because we do the social media side, but for candidates, I don't really think it's necessary. It's, it's kind of like buying a lottery ticket is that, you can win big, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. So, nice. Then I think that's basically that. Because you said you're gonna start streaming. You're gonna start your stream like right after this. So I can send my viewers over to you if they want to see you review resumes. So if you guys don't know, Lee reviews resumes on his YouTube channel, and he will like if you literally just go to his website and like just send your resume to him, like he'll just review it on stream. And I think he's got a line right now, but you could literally just
3 weeks, but you can still learn about. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but also please remove all your identifying information. Please do that. People said like their full socials. I'm like, this is on the web. Don't do that. So
yeah. No, and your YouTube channel is doing well. Honestly, like you're like the thing that you did too, where like you're realizing, oh, well, if I do tech, like I get way more views. Let me just keep doing that. Like that's huge. I mean, that's a lot of the part of the YouTube stuff is like you're just like you figure out the stuff that's working and you just keep doing that. So, and there's a ton of software engineers who are all like really, really sad, really, really depressed, and can't get jobs. So, sorry. Pat asked another question. What is candidate acceptance/pass rate from sourcing to offer? If you're able to share. So like if you get a candidate and you talk to them during your screen, what percentage of them get an offer from those hiring managers?
From active sourcing, the keyword here is if you do it right, and once you have the correct idea, which can take a while, 1 in 3. That's about, once it's right, about 1 in 3. Usually it takes like a week or two to fine tune it enough. So I can go over that a lot. Yeah, but it's, if you do it right, which is the key word, which is not a lot of people do. And even then, sometimes when you're really good, you have the wrong idea. So once the search is great and you figure it out, 1 in 3 is average. So I gotta get ready because it's starting the stream at 5. I gotta use the restroom too. So thank you very much, Raymond. I'd be glad to be back every now and then if you want. This was fun. I like talking with people. And so perfect.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll see you. I'm gonna post your links, and that's all. So thanks for doing this.
No worries.
Yeah, I'll see you.
See you. Thank you.